Well, hello Rainbow Nursery. It's Stephen back here with another Bible story for you. Over the last few weeks, we've been hearing the stories of how God made a good world, and when that world went wrong, God not giving up on that world, but God being committed to rescuing it. And last week we heard the story about Abraham, didn't we? And those special promises that God made to Abraham about the special family that he was going to give him. And do you remember the name of that baby that Abraham and Sarah eventually had as the start of that special family? That baby that they had to wait and wait and wait and wait for. That's right, that little baby was called Isaac, wasn't he? He was the start of the special family that God promised to Abraham. And when Isaac got older, that special family carried on, because Isaac got married to a woman called Rebecca, and eventually they had two babies born at the same time. And when two babies are born at the same time, we call them twins, don't we? I wonder if you know any twins. Sometimes twins look very, very like each other. From the minute they're born, they're more or less looking the same. And as those twins grow up, they can have a lot of fun tricking people by pretending to be each other. But there are other twins that look very different. Now, I've got twins. I've got a boy called James and a girl called Rebecca. They were born at the same time and they're twins, but they look very different. And here are some pictures of them as they grew older. But they don't look very like each other, do they? Although they're twins, no one could really think that one of them was the other. But although the twins in our story were both boys, they were very different from one another. One of them was called Esau and the other was called Jacob. And the major way that they were different was that Esau had lots of hair. Not just hair on his head, but hair on his arms as well. Hair all over his body. Jacob, though, was very different from that. He didn't have hair all over him. He just had a bit of hair on his head. But other than that, he was someone who was smooth. Now, because Esau was the older of the two twins, their daddy Isaac would give Esau lots of special things. And that made Jacob jealous. I want those special things instead of Esau, Jacob thought to himself. And so Jacob thought of a plan for getting those special things for himself. By this stage, Isaac was very old, and his eyes didn't work very well. He couldn't really see, and that's called being blind, isn't it? And so Jacob, with the help of his mummy Rebecca, thought of a very naughty plan for pretending that he was Esau and getting the special things. Remember that Esau was someone who was very hairy, wasn't he? He had lots of hair on his head and lots of hair on his arms and all over his body, while Jacob was someone who was smooth. So Jacob thought, I'll get an animal skin and I'll put it on myself. I'll put it on myself like this, all over my arms and over my head, and I will go to my daddy, I will go to Isaac, and I will pretend to be Esau. And you know, that's what Jacob did. He put on the animal skins and he went to see Isaac, and Isaac reached out his hands, and when he felt the animal skins, he thought it was the hair on Esau, and he gave the special things to Jacob instead of giving them to Esau. The plan, the naughty plan, that worked. And when Esau found out, he was really angry. He was furious. In fact, he was so mad with anger that Jacob became scared, and Jacob had to run away from home and to run a long way away. It was a very sad thing that had happened. Well, after Jacob had run away, he felt very tired and worn out. So Jacob lay down and went to sleep. And while he was asleep, he had a very strange dream. You probably have dreams when you go to sleep as well. And in Jacob's dream, he he saw a staircase. A staircase joining earth to God's special place called heaven, and angels coming up and down that staircase. When Jacob woke up, he carried on his journey, and he ended up going to live with his uncle, who was called Laban. Laban wasn't always very nice to Jacob, and sometimes he tricked Jacob rather like Jacob had tricked Esau. And Jacob stayed there a long time. But eventually Jacob decided that it was time to return home. So he started on that journey back. And while he journeyed back, Jacob was scared. What if Esau's still really angry with me? What if Esau is still really furious with me, he thought. And when he heard that Esau was coming out to meet him, Jacob got even more scared. But you know what happened? Esau came running up to Jacob, and he threw his arms around him and he hugged him, and he showed that he had totally forgiven Jacob for what he had done. Esau had forgiven Jacob for tricking him and taking the things away that belonged to Esau. And that meant that the twins were back together again. They were friends again. And really importantly, God's special family, the family that God had promised to Abraham, was back together again. And what the story shows is that even though that special family that God promised to Abraham could go wrong, and often did go wrong with people doing naughty things, God was never going to give up on that plan of rescuing the world and making it all good again and taking away all the bad things by using the family of Abraham to do that. So that's our story for this week. Next week, we're going to hear the story of Jacob's children, of Jacob's sons, and particularly about one of them called Joseph. But for now, let's finish with a prayer. Let's close our eyes and maybe put our hands together. Dear God, thank you that you love us. Sorry that we're sometimes naughty, rather like Jacob was, but thank you that you forgive us. Help us to be people that forgive others like Esau did. And thank you for the special family that you promised to Abraham. Amen. Well, it's been great to be with you, Rainbow Nursery. I'll see you next week. Bye!